In this episode, Golden and I discuss Bill and Ted Face the Music. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 93. I'm your host, Oren Merton. It's a bit odd to call this Bill and Ted series a trilogy, considering the first two movies came out somewhere around 3 decades ago. But Bill and Ted Face the Music is the third, and it's definitely a sequel to the first two. So if you don't know, it opened simultaneously in those movie theaters that are open right now and on demand on home video. So we caught it at home and thought it was worth talking about. We keep spoilers to a minimum, so if you haven't seen it yet, you're still good to go. And let's get to it. Dudes, I'm here with Golden, and let's talk about Bill and Ted Face the Music. We should say that we started our Bill and Ted experience by going back and watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted Face the Music, because we flat out didn't remember what it was. I mean, we'd seen it when we were teenagers, but we hadn't seen them recently and didn't want to just jump right in to the recent movie. So how did you feel about the series once we'd seen 1 and 2 and then going into 3? What were you sort of expecting?
It's all very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I really necessarily expected anything.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to enjoy the movie and have a fun time. I thought it was a lot of fun. I from the previews thought that it was going to be Bill and Ted and their daughters together on the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily that they each had their own tracks.
Right. They each had their own adventure, their own excellent adventure. Yeah, it's a tough line to walk when you bring back a franchise that's, 25 years old or however old this one is, because on the one hand, you want to give people what they liked about it in the first place. But on the other hand, you can't not acknowledge that all this time has passed and there can't be zero growth. I mean, nobody wants to see 50-plus-year-old men acting like 18-year-olds from the 80s. There needs to be some growth. And I think they walked that line of having the characters grow while also giving you what you liked about them to begin with. And I think the supporting cast that they brought in, I mean, Bill, Ted, they brought back.
It's amazing that they basically got to bring the entire cast back.
Yeah. They brought back themselves. They brought back
the princesses.
William Sadler. They brought back the princesses. And they were all great. But they also introduced a new supporting cast that I thought they did a great job.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed seeing Bill and Ted take and, what's really important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And also the daughters and what they decide to do.
Right. And of course, being ultimately a time travel comedy, they did manage to make the time travel fun like they did in the other movies and have a lot of jokes based on interacting with themselves and can we change the past and can we change the future? Because obviously technology has advanced so much, they were able to make the CG and the new world and everything look much better, but at the same time retain that kind of out of service phone boxiness of the original.
Well, the phone box was like integral.
It was.
So I guess one of the only ones that didn't come back was the guy playing Deacon, his brother.
Mm-hmm.
That was a different actor.
That was a different actor?
Yeah. But otherwise, I mean, you had basically most of the entire cast. And you had, it's really cute that Bill and Ted are always we. We love the princesses.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Bill and Ted going to couples counseling. And their idea of what couples counseling is versus what the counselor's idea of couples counseling is very different.
And that's a perfect example of what I was saying of growth with giving you what you want, because obviously they're adults, they're married, they have children, their lives have moved on. They're not the same 18-year-olds, but on the other hand, their personalities are still where they were in a funny way.
And the Bogus ends with them having the kids.
Right.
And they just introduce them as Little Bill and Little Ted.
Right.
So people probably assume, okay, they're boys. And so they didn't have to retcon anything because their nicknames were Little Bill and Little Ted.
That's right.
I mean, so that still worked very well.
Very, very, very much so. And I have to say, I felt that it was really sweet, kind of the way that they weaved the late George Carlin into it as well. So I appreciated that because he was a major part of the first one.
And they did it as basically, we want to honor him by having a little memorial, and they had like a little memorial to him.
Yeah.
So that was really nice.
Yeah. It was very well. I mean, overall, I'd have to say, if you are thinking of renting this on whatever platform you want to, it's absolutely an hour and a half of fun. I mean, it's just straight sci-fi zany fun. It's light, it's entertaining, and we just sort of chuckled our way through the whole thing.
And props to William Sadler and his death.
Oh, yeah.
His death is just nice and kooky and just a whole bunch of fun as well.
Exactly.
And you talk about character growth. You have the father that has been rigid and you're never going to amount to anything, and him getting to see another perspective.
Right.
So it was just a lot of fun, and I thought that it actually worked better than I thought it was going to work in terms of Bill and Ted have their path.
Right.
The daughters have their path. And where it meets and all of that, I feel like it synced up very nicely.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I thought it was interesting how I think we both walked in expecting to enjoy it, but not necessarily expecting to enjoy it as much as we did. That I think we were both looking to have a good time. We had the good time, but it was better than we thought.
And then you were also saying that you made a connection with Timeless.
Yes, that is amusing. For those who watch the Timeless television series, they named the time-traveling protagonists after Bill, Ted, and Rufus, which I thought was a real kick when I saw that on Twitter. Who would have thought that this little indie sci-fi comedy made in the 80s would turn out to be not just fun, but influential and even continue 25 years later.
I don't really think I think there's only, of the three movies, I can only think of one thing that was actually filmed in San Dimas.
It was just all over, yeah.
Most of it was filmed in Arizona, but I think using just that little part of Raging Waters as Raging Waters was back then, because that park has evolved so much as well.
Yeah.
I have an original map of Raging Waters, and it's like 8 slides, and the wave pool. So that has evolved so much more. But it was interesting that they used a combination of 2 different water parks to create Waterloo. But I can't think of, I'm trying to remember when I was trying to do some research as to how much was filmed in San Dimas. That's the only thing I can think of. And having grown up within walking distance of San Dimas, when this came out, it was like, oh my gosh, that's San Dimas. That's our neighbor. And we were supposed to have a big rivalry with San Dimas and Laverne, but
it was a rivalry that not too many people were involved in, I take it.
No. Well, mainly like the high school football team and stuff like that. But so I guess there were a couple like goofs, because I guess it looks like from IMDb, Babe Ruth is shown batting right-handed instead of left. And yes, Mozart did speak English.
Okay.
So, and also that, he shouldn't be as tall as Jimi Hendrix.
Well,
And Jimi Hendrix apparently is using a combination of alternate picking and classical scales. But why not? It's a fantasy movie.
That's right. I hope that not too many people are using this film as their academic research for what these historical figures were actually like. It's more just taking figures out of history because it's fun.
Yeah, and I think that, people were like, well, how come if the world's going to end, then they can go and they can visit their future selves if their future selves don't actually have the song? Because it's a fantasy movie.
Because it was a good joke, and the scriptwriter said, "Oh, this will be funny," and they were more interested.
Yeah, their time travel rules go with Die Hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
The one non-example of a time travel movie, right?
Right. So there, this is not a documentary. Don't watch this movie looking for plot holes. It's like this is the movie that something like the YouTube channel CinemaSins would have an absolute field day with. But who cares? It's not about that. It's about fun. It's about, are you going to sit there and go on the ride and feel like you got something out of it?
And at one point you're like, wow, Keanu Reeves looks really old in this movie. I seriously think that they made him look older than what he actually looks like. I do.
Okay.
I think that they actually made him look older because he's actually in better shape than his character would be. And also props to Anthony Carrigan, who plays Dennis Caleb McCoy. I'm Dennis Caleb McCoy.
Yeah.
We really enjoy him in Barry, and
right.
It was nice to see him in something that's on the big screen. Well, our big screen being, 72 inches?
Right. Well, you could see this in the theater if you're in a country or in an area where there are drive-in theaters or whatever.
And then I saw on Twitter that Alex Winter went to a drive-in
to show the movie
of the movie in Montclair, which is literally only couple towns away from San Dimas.
Yeah. So
that was kind of neat.
I mean, if wherever you happen to be, you can see this in a theater in a safe way. I mean, it's certainly not a bad movie to see. We've been watching things at home because we've been sheltering in place, but if you can be safe and see something like this in a theater, it would be a fun watch.
Yeah, the cast was very entertaining. You had a couple people showing up as themselves, Kid Cudi and Dave Grohl.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you say it?
Yep, Dave Grohl.
So it's just a lot of fun.
Exactly. And in the end, it really has just a sweet, uplifting message. And there were a few times where I actually found myself surprisingly moved by a movie that really wasn't intending to be like a pull at the heartstrings kind of film, but it did. It managed to actually pull at some heartstrings, I think, as well.
Bill and Ted have the universe to save.
Mm-hmm.
But if it comes down to this single moment, save the universe or save your princesses. And the decision that they make is very telling.
Well, that's why we like them, because even though we can laugh at their, limited schooling and all the rest, the fact is that these are people with a great heart that makes you root for them. And I think that's important. I think you have to have protagonists that you want to succeed so that when they don't succeed, when they run into challenges, you're invested. You really want them to pick themselves back up and to succeed.
And when you look at their houses side by side that they both live in,
mm-hmm.
and you think, how could they afford this when they don't have jobs?
Right. It's their wives.
It's like, wait a minute. No, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's not a documentary.
No, and hey, the digital effects were a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They did really well. In some of the earlier ones, the effects were pretty cheesy, but it was not just because it was a different time, but even for the time, these were low budget movies.
But it's still okay to be cheesy.
Yeah. Even this was a low budget movie. I think I read that the budget for this movie was something like $25 million, which, obviously that's a ton more than any of the earlier ones were. But by the same token, when you're talking about $200 million Marvel blockbusters, $25 million is a scene in one of those movies, let alone a whole movie.
It's interesting, like IMDb has a rating of 6.4, but then you jump over to Rotten Tomatoes And Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter is at 81%.
Yeah, it's
and
a
the
very
audience
good
score
movie.
is at 77. So most people, they're enjoying it.
Yeah, this is an enjoyable movie. I mean, like I said, if you're like the kind of person who likes to watch movies specifically to pick apart the plot, this is not a movie that was plotted to be like
Well, you're gonna
airtight.
have a lot of fun picking it
that's
apart.
true.
I mean,
you'll enjoy it
you'll
just
enjoy
because
it.
the scenes are enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, this is not one of those types of movies. But as far as just a ride you can take and enjoy, this is one of the better films of recent memory.
and watch the little like pre-filming or little advert thing that's only a few minutes, because it's really cute, because the one actress that is playing Ted's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
Billy, Bridget Lundy Payne,
Mm-hmm.
jokes around that she followed Keanu Reeves around in the kitchen, in the bathroom for months, and she really does kind of capture a lot of the Ted mannerisms.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And hey, one of the other actresses was
Samara Weaving, yeah.
Hugo Weaving's niece. Was that who?
I think that was the relationship.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely a lot of fun. Recommended. Absolutely worth your time. So, thank you, Golden.
You are welcome.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/93. If you liked this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts. The reviews that you write help people who like this kind of thing find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.